Welcome to the March meeting for the New Jersey Electric Auto Association. Welcome everybody who's joining us, members and guests online, as well as those who are listening afterwards. There's a QR code here on the slide, and if you scan that, that'll take you to more information about our organization. Go ahead, Stan, and next slide. Thank you also to our sponsors, Signature Detailing in New Jersey. If anyone knows of additional sponsors who would be good for our organization, this has been really helpful for our organization, and we're very, very appreciative of our sponsors. Thank you. Next slide. All right, so my name's Alex Brown. I've been a member of the New Jersey Electric Auto Association for a very, very long time. I can't even remember how many years, but I'm an organizer. And so today I'm running the meeting. So we're going to do a members update. We're going to talk about our new bylaws, and then we're going to talk about some New Jersey electric vehicle news and some organizational updates. And then we have a very special guest. Loren McDonald is here with us. He's going to talk about when will EV sales return. As we all know, there have been some problems lately with EV sales. Then we're going to talk about upcoming events in New Jersey and our next meeting and questions and answers. As I mentioned, we are the New Jersey Electric Auto Association. Our mission is to accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles by empowering our nationwide member-driven network of local chapters to educate communities, share real-world EV experiences, and inform decision-making. We equip individuals and communities with unbiased experience-based information about electric vehicles, chapter-led outreach and educational events. Basically, we go to car shows with our cars and we tell people how great they are. That's mostly what we do. And local events and things like that. And we're a resource here, community for people who are passionate about electric vehicles. And our websites are down at the bottom of the page there. And it's all volunteer. None of us get paid for any of this. Go ahead, Stan. All right, so we have some renewals. Thank you, Marinus J. Brookman, Mario Caballero, Michael Hornsby, and Kenneth R. Hunold. As always, we should be recruiting. When you're talking to people about EVs, make sure you tell them about our organization. If we keep our membership up, it keeps the organization strong. Right now, we're at 93 active members. And didn't we get in some recognition at the national level, Stan, recently?
Well, we got recognition in 2022 for being Chapter of the Year North.
Okay, that was a while ago.
And last year we got, well, within New Jersey, Ashley was recognized, our policy lead, for being the Young Professional, EV Professional of the Year. And also Madison Borough was recognized for being EV Town of the Year, not for New Jersey, but nationally, which is quite prestigious. We got some other nominations, but we'll try to submit them again this year. So
all right, great. And now tuned. Ashley is on the board.
She's on the board, which is great. Yeah, we are very excited. And soon you will receive actually email invitation for our annual meeting. Back to you, Alex.
All right, so next slide. All right, so our bylaws. So the core team had spent quite a bit of time talking about changes to our bylaws, and our referendum began today at 8 a.m. All members are welcome to vote. We're establishing more of a board model instead of specific positions. So people run, we elect people to be on the board, and then the board chooses the functions of the people who are elected. More popular with nonprofits, that model. Voting ends on March 21st, 8 p.m., and the bylaws link is included on this slide. So again, all members, please check that out and vote. There's an example here of what the email looks like that went out. Do you want to add anything else, Stan? Please vote, because we would love to have like a minimum number of people voting for this. So even if this isn't your thing and you don't really care that much, please just show your support for the leadership and put your vote in.
This referendum will be followed by call for running for position for the board. So if you are interested, please get ready, and you will be pretty much contacting me or Dennis. He's our secretary right now. So we'll go to next slide.
All right. So EV news. War. What is it good for? Raising gas prices. So we're going to talk. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk about the BYD new blade batteries, 250,000 registered EVs in New Jersey, and then Aptera real quick. Let's get through this quick here. Next slide. All right, so as you guys all know, we invaded Iran. The Strait of Hormuz is shut down, so gas prices are rising and expected to rise more. Next slide. So right now it's up past 350 nationally, and electricity prices are also rising, and this has been going on for a while now because of all the data centers. You know, I like making slides. That's one of the reasons why I like our speaker today, because I'm hoping he'll have a lot of great graphs and things to share with us. But so this is also a problem. So if they're both going up, where do we stand right now? So I just did a quick little chart here comparing a Camry to a Model 3 historically. It used to be when we would go to shows, we would say, you're paying a third in electricity if you're charging at home than, for what you would pay for gas for the same distance. And as you can see here, if we're back at 5, that had slowly been eroding because of the rising electricity prices. But it looks like if things go back to $5, we can confidently say that again. So, but in this slide is also a reminder of off-peak rates. So if any of you are not charging, if you haven't signed up for time of use metering, it doesn't cost anything now. It'll likely save you money if you have an EV, highly recommended.
Hey, Alex, can I just make a quick comment? So years ago, back in both 2017 and 2019, I did 2 different regression analysis projects where I looked at about 30 different variables that affected EV sales by state. And in both cases, gas prices had the highest correlation. Now, we can debate whether it was causation, but it had the highest correlation. And especially, I think, out like in places where I live in California, where our gas prices are always $5 or $6, right?
Right. All right. All right, so enough about this, I guess. If you haven't heard about the new BYD Blade battery, super cool. They're demonstrating 250 miles in 5 minutes with their flash charging technology. This is not in the US, of course, and who knows when we'll see that here, but very promising technology. I think one of the demos, they were using 2 cables, but they also have a new standard it's called like a T connector, and it comes down from above and connects to the car. So if you haven't seen that, just check that out. Go ahead, Stan. And Aptera, finally, we have our first delivery vehicle. Kind of exciting, but they have a long way to go.
Not delivery, sorry, I have to interrupt. It's just they started producing without the engineer, but they still need to do some crash tests and whatnot.
I gotcha.
It's coming.
So nobody has a delivery date yet, right? Okay.
They don't want to disclose it, but this year, I think it's really coming.
All right, I cannot wait. can't
We'll
wait.
just take bets, which will be here, the Tesla Roadster or the Aptera, right?
That's going to look great in your driveway, Stan.
Well, and it's not gonna go to the garage, that's for sure. This vehicle is by design not to go to garage. It will stay outside, sipping the sun, and regardless of whether you drive or not, as long as the sun is shining, it's going to give you. We'll see how many miles a day. In New Jersey, if it gives me on average 30 days, I think I'll be happy. But your mileage may vary. If you know me well, I'm hyper miler. So maybe I will make from the New Jersey sunshine 30 miles, but someone else would probably make 15. We'll see.
All right, so moving on. Let's get to our speaker here. Yes, Drive Electric Earth Month is coming up. If anybody is still planning something, you've already missed your deadline for kits, for getting your kit, but if you haven't already submitted it, but we can still plan events and post them. And, I'm hoping this year we'll maybe get some car shows in there as well. All right, so now let's go ahead and move on to our speaker. Loren McDonald is the CEO and Chief Analyst at Chargeonomics LLC. He provides clients with rigorous analysis and insights on current and future state of electric vehicle adoption and its intersection with EV charging infrastructure and the driver experience. Previously, he was Chief Analyst at charging data firm Perrin and founder of EV Adoption, an EV charging analyst firm. He also leverages more than 30 years of experience as a marketing executive, consultant, and evangelist for companies including IBM and Arthur Andersen. He's written more than 600 articles on marketing, electric vehicle, and EV charging trends, and has delivered more than 600 presentations and webinars around the world. And I just want to say, very prolific on LinkedIn. Please go to his LinkedIn page and check out the daily fabulous charts and analyses that he provides. He's my kind of guy. I love data. So without further ado, when will US EV sales return? Over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Alex. And first, just want to thank Alex and Stan for inviting me. And when we had our initial call, we were sort of talking about what they wanted me to talk about, and where we ended up was this topic: when will EV sales return in the US? So I probably have way too many slides, but this is a small group and we'll be casual, but I'm going to pound through these if I can. There we go. But I'm going to probably go through these pretty quickly, but maybe stop in between some of them and have some conversation. So the short answer to the question is, which then I'll spend the rest of this time talking about and answering, is I believe in Q4 of this year, and then obviously scaling back up in 2027 for growth. And, when I'm defining the term for this presentation around return as meaning first sort of hitting where we were before the tax credit in 2025, and then scaling up after that. All right, so one of the things we talked about, they wanted me to just sort of set the context of where we are for the US. This was a slide I actually presented at an automotive conference in South Africa back in 2023. So I took it, thought it would be fun to take the 2022 data and then add the 2025 so you could see how things have grown. No surprise, Norway is almost at 100% for new EV sales. I forget what they are, and sort of for VIO, I think it's 15, 20%, something like that, actual vehicles on the road. You look at Germany. Germany's grown, a decent amount, but not, a massive amount in the last few years. But China obviously is, grown significantly. That's the focus of the country and the industry. UK is almost tripled or so, or what, more than doubled. California's gone up almost 2x in those 4 years. New Jersey's gone up a decent amount, and U.S. is from a percentage point perspective, it's only gone up about 4 points, but doubled. But we're way ahead of Japan, and South Africa is barely barely registers. And so just the net of this is we're making some progress in the US and New Jersey and stuff, but we're well behind many parts of the rest of the world. No surprise.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look back at where we've come in just in the US. So obviously, we started, I like to call 2010 the start of the modern era, when you had the Chevrolet Volt and the Nissan Leaf. But we sort of had some gradual increases over the years, and then when the Chevy Bolt and the Nissan, or the Chevy Bolt and the Tesla Model 3 came out, things started to bump up. Then the Model Y really sort of took off. I've got a slide on California that brings this to life in a minute. But really, the last 3 years, and if you include my forecast for 2026, the US, we've been basically, we've gone up and down a little bit, but we've basically been flat in the 1.2 to 1.3 range. And I have us declining down quite a bit in 2026. So I'll come back to that, I think. So I posted this slide on LinkedIn a couple months ago, just kind of for fun. Any Being There fans out there will get it. But there's been so much negativity post the tax credit going away, and really just the point is to have some positive hope here, and that we are going to see growth in this spring and beyond. And so this chart is the 2025 BEV sales. So I'm just focused on BEVs, no plug-in hybrids in today's presentation, for each quarter in 2025, and then my forecasts for those quarters and full year for 2026. And so obviously, Q1 and Q2 are down quite a bit versus 2025, and then obviously Q3. So later this year, we're going to see some really horrible headlines in the media when they look at Q3 of 2026 versus Q3 of 2025, which we had, an abnormal explosion in probably bad word, but a rise in BEV sales because of the end of the tax credit. But Q3 is actually starting to approach what we saw earlier in the year last year. And so then sorry, I forgot that I had builds on this one. And so that was the last quarter there of the tax credit in Q3 for that big jump. My forecast for Q4 of 2026, if I'm anywhere close to being correct on this, is really positive news, in that we would be above where we were in Q2 of last year, right? And so to me, Q2 of last year is really more the benchmark for 2025 because of the aberration of both Q3 and Q4. So, for me, that's really pretty positive. And then obviously, as you can see by this chart, EV sales in the US can vary widely by quarter, even in sort of a normal year. But if you just use Q4 as sort of a benchmark run rate for the following year, that would put us at almost 1.4 million, which would be above where we've been the last few years. So anything can happen, but a positive sign. But the negative news for the year is I have us still being down about 16% over 2025, just because we still have Q1 and a little bit of Q2 are still partially down because people pulled forward their EV sales into Q3 of last year. My wife and I did that, got a new EV well before our lease on our then current EV expired. A lot of people did that. So we're still working through that. Well, people literally, bought a new or leased a new vehicle, up to 2 to 3 quarters in ahead of when they normally would because of the expiring tax credit. All right, before I move on, Alex, Dan,
I have one question. Did you come up with these estimates before or after we went to war with Iran? And does that impact?
Yeah, in the last week, these are. I have finalized it this morning because I updated a couple of models. So my forecasts are bottom up, meaning I have a database of all of the EV models that are currently available, still selling, but have been canceled, as well as all the new EVs coming up for the year. And I build out a forecast for them for every quarter down to the penny, if you will. So, but yeah, it's not really taking into consideration the potential impact of gas prices, but it's recent. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Loren, would you say that your numbers are conservative or more optimistic?
That's a good question.
Or you are just trying to be right on spot?
I think they're probably conservative. In the past, I've been too aggressive, right? Like a lot of analysts, many of us sort of missed, some of the pullback, but they're probably pretty conservative. The real issue we'll get to later is it's fundamentally. To me, it's about supply, not demand, but we'll come back to that.
Very good, thank you.
So in 2017, when I launched my EV adoption business and website, my very first blog post was called Karma, where I came up with this framework, an acronym for the things that I felt then and still feel are the 5 key drivers of EV adoption in America. The first and still most important one is charging, quick and ubiquitous, that they have to be competitively priced, not necessarily affordable, right? Because a lot of the EVs are still, luxury EVs. So it's really more about being sort of competitively priced with similar ICE vehicles. There's been 100 studies and surveys that said, most consumers want 300 plus miles. We're actually pretty much there now with most models. And to me, the other big one continues to be, model availability. And then the other one that I think is really the big nut we have to crack, which is what you guys do in this group, thank you very much, is a lot of people out there still don't understand charging and EVs and the acronyms and all of the different things. A lot of people have never been in one. They're not familiar with them. They still think an EV is a hybrid and it has a gas engine in it. There's just still so much lack of understanding, awareness. We have a lot of work to do. But so I'm going to touch on a few of these going forward and focus mostly on charging. So this was a study a year ago from J.D. Power that looked at EV rejectors. So those people that basically say they're not interested in EV. And these were the top 5 concerns of theirs. And you see, like it's still very high, but the purchase price was not the highest one. In fact, the perception of lack of charging station availability, time to charge, charging distance, etc. So, fundamentally, this is no surprise to anybody in this call, but charging and people's awareness and understanding of it, or lack of understanding of it, and the availability of charging, and that you charge mostly at home, etc., unless of course you live in an apartment, is still perhaps our biggest challenge to getting people over the hump. And so, like, where are we? Well, actually, with fast charging, we're absolutely crushing it, right? So the blue bars are the number of new DC fast charging ports that have been added in these years. We added almost 17,000 in the U.S. last year. Many of them NACS as well, and we reached basically we're over 70,000 fast charging ports now, and so it's really starting to scale, right? We added 69% of the fast charging public ports have been added in the last 4 years, right? So and this year we're probably going to add another 19,000, right? We're just scaling this at an incredible pace. So I'm not a big fan of what I call the BEV to port ratio. I think it has a lot of weaknesses and stuff, but in this case, I think it's somewhat meaningful and helps us understand kind of where we're at. What it basically means is you take the number, in this case, the number of new BEVs that were sold in each of these years, and then divide that by the number of new ports. And so the lower the number, the better, right? So we actually are getting better, right? We're actually at the moment, we're adding more new fast charging ports relative to the number of new BEV sales. So that's bad news that EV sales aren't growing, but from a driver perspective, the charging experience, in this case, just from the availability, the number of them is getting better.
And I have to say, like, from my personal experience,
yeah,
that is so true in the past year. I mean, a little over a year ago, it seemed like things were pretty crowded. And lately there are just so many more chargers, and it's been a lot easier to take long trips.
Yeah. No, that's great. One sort of negative thing here, and I'm not meaning to pick on EVgo. I could have picked Electrify America, Tesla, anybody, and their maps all look very similar to this. One of the negative things is, as everybody knows, is with the NEVI program, the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, sort of being paused and slowed down and now at risk, etc. People misunderstood, and the Biden administration did a really bad job of educating people about its intent. The NEVI program was never about adding a lot of charging stations, right? I mean, by my guess, and I tracked NEVI for like 2.5, 3 years before I sold my business. The NEVI program was going to only add, maybe 7,000 to 8,000 ports on sort of the interstates. And we added, twice that much just this year, right? Without NEVI funding, right? So the point of NEVI, and the concern that I still have, and many of my peers as analysts, is that is that the fast charging network companies are in the business of putting them where they can make money and they have high utilization and high throughput, right? And so the problem is without some assistance from utilities and the governments, et cetera, you have maps like this, right? Where they're going to go where the EVs are, EV penetration are, because you have high utilization and throughput and revenue, right? But there isn't a lot of motivation to put them out, on these corridors and stuff like that. So this is one sort of red flag and concern I have going forward is, in a lot of these people who say they don't want an EV will be people that say, well, I want to drive from, to looking at this map, from Portland to South Dakota to see the Mount Rushmore or whatever it is, right? And there's no chargers, right? So I'm not going to get an EV, right? And so whether it's reality or perception, this is one of my concerns, right? It's like if you're in San Francisco, charging's no problem, right? Out in the middle of Wyoming or South Dakota, Montana, maybe an issue, right? All right, but back to sort of positive. So, what's actually happening that's actually going to really help reduce this? I know we don't like the word anxiety, but what's going to reduce sort of the range and really charger anxiety? Well, one of the great things that's happening is that a lot of the new EVs that are coming out, especially those with 800, 900 volt architecture, can charge at 250, 300, and many of the ones coming down the pike, Porsches and some of the other ones can charge north of that, 350 to 400, right? That's still kind of rare, but it's coming down the path. We have LFP and sodium ion and solid state batteries, the long dream of solid state batteries. We're starting to sniff them, right? They're still not really here that yet in cars, but next few years, hopefully we'll start to see them, and that'll really help with longer range and or faster charging. There's a lot of, especially some of the like the Hyundai group and VW group, like our Audi that we have, can charge in 15 to 20 minutes from 10% to 80%. But in the next few years, we should see a lot of the newer EVs, increasingly get down below 20 to 15 minutes, and someday we'll get those BYDs where it'll be 5 or 10 minutes, but we're going to have to wait for that. And obviously, I think there's only one new EV coming out this year that will not have, or maybe it's two, something like that. But almost every new EV coming to market this year comes standard with a NACS/J3400 port from the factory. And there are a lot of EVs out there that are well north of 300 miles of range, with many now 350, 400 plus. So all that is, not necessarily here for everything right now, but it's coming in the next few years, and all of that is going to really help with EV sales. I'll pause there for a second, and unless Alex, Stan, you had any comments, questions?
There were some questions in the chat about the statistics. Where are you talking about new car sales or new and used? I'm guessing that's probably, you were talking about new car sales, right?
Just new. Yeah. I'm only talking about new in here. And obviously, I mean, we could talk about used in the Q&A and stuff, but no, just new.
And then Robert was asking if the ports metric is based on public chargers. Is it public, yes, or is it also fast chargers, or just public in general?
No, it's just public fast charging.
Oh, just public fast chargers, right? Okay.
Yeah. Good. Yep. So I'm going to switch now to what I call sort of the supply side, if you will. I have a lot of arguments.
Was that? Jump in. I realized I was on mute. When Alex mentioned how important is the charger availability, and I wanted to also chime in that the 2017 Chevy Bolt that we purchased in 2017, I would not want to go on a road trip at that time, because I would be afraid that I would not have the opportunity to charge. And what is weird that as the vehicle gets older, it is more amenable for road trips. And I took it really to prove it to Orlando, Florida in December 2023. And that was, mind you, before Tesla opened up to Chevy. Right. So I was able to make it. We had lots of planning, of course. Some charging sessions were in fast charging fashion, but some of them were in hotel overnight. Some of them were planned to take during city visits, like in Charleston, in Savannah, places like that. And oddly enough, in some of these places, the level 2 was actually free. The parking was relatively cheap and charging was free. So, of course, I didn't get full charge over 3 hours or 4 hours during the visit, but it was meaningful and it did help. So I really like how the proliferation of charging stations help. Also comment about the required range. You mentioned that's 300 plus. Well, in 2012, or 11, when Nissan Leaf was launched, we were told that 100 miles is the minimum, right? And so, well, the first generation Leaf didn't make it, by the way, but the second, if we want to call it second generation, made 106 miles. And at that time, people were like, yeah, well, 100 miles is not enough. We need 150, right? And then when vehicles with 150 miles came up, they said, no, we need 200. And then when 200, 250 came up, they said 300. So I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there is something else going on when people just ask for more and more range, and perhaps they are afraid to plug it in. And let me add one more thing. Here in New Jersey, if you go to gas station with a gas car, you don't touch the nozzle because we have mandatory full service, right? So people are really spoiled that when they need to gas up, they just roll down the window, pass the credit card, and say 3 magic words, fill it up, right? Please is optional. So with charging, whether you plug it at home or public charging station, you have to physically do it. So what is your take?
Yeah, so two things. One, the range stuff, like GM did a lot of surveys of customers, for years and years ago, and Mary Barra would always tout this, right? That people expect a minimum of 300 miles, and there have been dozens of studies and surveys out there that say that. But for those of us on this call that own, lease, and drive EVs, for most of us, we know that that's not necessarily the case. I mean, our first EV was the Tesla Model S 60, which had 210 miles of range, right? And we're now on our fourth EV, and that's still my favorite EV. That 210 miles of range was perfect. We took it on road trips from the Bay Area to Los Angeles multiple times. Was it perfect, ideal for that? No, but it was great. We'd stop and get breakfast or lunch or dinner or whatever it is and come back out to the car and it was done charging, right? So, experienced people know that you don't necessarily need 300, 400 miles of range unless you're doing, road trips multiple long road trips, towing a boat every week and stuff like that. But if you're just sort of normal driving, you can get by with less of that. And on sort of hotel charging, I've long felt that the secret sauce of Tesla and charging was the destination charging, combined with the superchargers, right? And we did that multiple times, right? We drive down Interstate 5 to go to, let's say, Palm Springs. The hotel we stayed at had a Tesla wall connector. We could stop one less time at a supercharger because we knew when we get there we could plug in and wake up in the morning with full charge. So even though I actually deleted my level 2 slide. I had one in here. I'm a massive fan, and we're actually underbuilding level 2 right now. And sort of over focused on fast charging because that's what non-EV drivers think that they need. But yeah, so and that's why we need more education, more butts and seats, and more of what you guys do at the New Jersey EV Association, getting people to understand what they actually need, and they may not need 300, 400 miles of range.
All right.
In the interest of time, I'm going to keep going so I can get through my slides and leave time for Q&A, etc. So I talked a bit about charging and stuff like that, and the other piece of this that I'm going to focus on is what I call supply side. And as I started to say, I get in some disagreements with people in LinkedIn about this, but I fundamentally believe that, you know, consumers can't buy what doesn't exist, right? And in this case, it's all about availability of EV models. So this is a chart, and this chart actually had plug-in hybrid sales, but let's just focus on the blue line and BEV sales. So I use this chart for California just to sort of make a point, but it applies US wide as well. And so you can see that, you know, again, like we saw in the earlier US chart, the BEV sales sort of went along. In fact, as you can see here, they're sort of, them and plug-in hybrid sales sort of mirrored each other, right? Because remember, we had the Chevrolet Volt and the early Prius plug-in hybrid, etc. But then, you know, the Bolt came out at the end of 2016. And then what really drove the increase was the Tesla Model 3 was released in July of 2017, and then the Model Y in 2020. And you know, one of the first lessons I learned in the EV industry when I'm dealing with EV sales data and forecasts and stuff is it's all about Tesla, right? If you don't get Tesla right, you're going to be way off. And Tesla still is key, right? Whatever it's 45, 50%, 45 or so percent of US BEV sales. And not everybody agrees with me on this, but I believe that one of our challenges and reasons for things sort of being slow recently is we haven't had a new Tesla high volume model, right? The Model Y is, you know, basically 6 years old, right? And and the way you grow not just EV sales but ICE sales is you introduce new models, right? I used an example. I did analysis about a year ago looking at the Ford F-150. I'm going to get the year wrong, but its peak year was like, you know, in the 80s or something like that, right? Or maybe it was the 90s. I can't remember what year it was. Maybe it was 94, like whatever it was. But, you know, the idea that cars just keep going up and up and up and up isn't reality, right? And so part of what we need is just more high volume models, including from Tesla, which we may not ever get, right? But the other thing is when we think about supply and you think about consumers walking into their favorite brands, you know, dealership to buy a new car, in many cases, that dealership will have 0 models, right? So, you know, basically 50% of the automotive brands, in this case, I looked at 38 brands, excluding like Ferrari and Rolls-Royce and stuff, but 38 mainstream brands, right? 50% of them offer either 0 models or 1 model, right? And, you know, and then there's some that offer, you know, 5, 6, 8, etc. But most of them, but you know, in essence, if you're a Mazda fan or a Infiniti fan, right, whatever it is, you can't get an EV, right? And so you're going to buy another, you know, ICE or hybrid or whatever it is, right? So I get a bit upset when I read all these headlines and stuff and all these statements from certain auto manufacturers that say, oh, we're pivoting because there isn't demand for EVs. Well, these are from some of the same companies that produce either 0 or not competitive EVs, right? So anyway, let's move on. Now on the positive side, what happens when you're a brand, in this case, an American brand, that actually produces compelling and multiple BEV models that are really, really solid BEVs? I'm talking about the Cadillac BEVs. They now have four models that all have like over 300 miles of range. They're really solid BEVs. And they're not weird looking in anything. They look just like normal sort of Cadillac SUVs. And look what they did, right? they reached 40% in Q3 of the brand sales were BEVs, but they, if you pull back from that, they basically hit 27% in the previous and post quarter. And there's a reason for this, right? Cadillac is obviously a luxury brand, but they understood their customer base, and they produced 4 SUVs that were compelling and were what their customers wanted, and they did well. Now, obviously, it's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward, but this just it's a positive case study from American brand. You build good BEVs, and people will buy them. Speaking of which, Toyota is really, in essence, probably the most important automotive brand in America, especially on the coast, like out here in California. Everybody loves Toyotas, Hondas, and Teslas. But Toyota has been a bit of a laggard, and their initial EVs are, not anything to write home about. But then they've improved them, and now they're going basically from one Toyota and one Lexus to 6 models by the end of this year, right? And so it's been interesting to see how they do. But there's been a lot of studies that say that the number one brand of EV that consumers want is Toyota. And so I expect these models to do fairly well. And so with Tesla, Tesla, with Toyota sort of gearing up its game, I think it's really important to understand that and see, how that impacts the market. And one of the things that many of the automakers, one of the challenges when you think about supply, and Toyota's been guilty of this, especially with their plug-in hybrids, is just not producing enough. Whether it's not, importing enough from Japan or whatever, or making enough here in the US. And so this was a really good sign when Toyota said basically they're going to build these things at scale and volume. And so that's really good news, because again, a lot of these automakers just have not been producing in many cases enough of them. I mean, Audi pulled back. We got an Audi Q6 e-tron in September, and the next quarter they sold 10,000 in Q3, and they sold 600 in Q4 because Audi basically stopped bringing them into the US, right? So supply is huge. And speaking of which, we're going to have about 30 new BEV models that should hit the US market this year, and about 35 in the next 18 months. And a lot of them are going to be affordable, like the Bolt and the Leaf and the Toyota CHR. But then we've got the the Rivian R2 that could be a game changer, the Kia EV3, the Slate truck next year, the Ford mid-size truck, on and on and on, right? A lot of these, the most important thing about a lot of these vehicles is that they're actually generation 2 and generation 3 vehicles, right? These are the second and third platforms and chances that these automakers have had, and they're really getting producing much more compelling and competitive EVs. But on a negative note, I used this slide a couple months ago in another presentation, and I don't mean to pick on dealers, because there's a lot of really good dealers out there, but there's also a lot of auto dealers that still have no interest in selling EVs. I've experienced some really bad experiences when my wife and I went in to test drive. It literally, we went into like one auto dealership, a Mercedes, and we were on our third Tesla, and the guy said, "Oh, the car doesn't have regenerative braking," right? And it's like, what do you mean, right? And he tried to basically sell it down the tubes, and he didn't even know that the own brand of car and model that he was selling had regenerative braking, right? So we still have a lot of work to do with dealers out there, and get them excited. And one anecdote, years ago, I was back in Detroit at a GM event and had a private conversation, myself and four other writers, analysts, with Mark Royce, who's the president of GM. And he made a really, really compelling point. And at the time, GM had just killed the Volt and had come out with the Bolt. So they only had one BEV model. And he said, it's really our fault that sales are what they are. He said, until automakers provide a dealership with 3 or 4 or so EV models, then for a dealership, selling EVs is just a hobby. They don't take it serious. It's one of 20 models on the lot. They could care less. But if they have 3 or 4 or whatever it is, like we saw with Cadillac, now all of a sudden it's a business, right? And so I thought that was a really, really, sort of important point that he made. And so this ties back to, again, a lot of these automakers may only offer, one EV or so. So no wonder dealers don't get excited about it. All right. Wrapping up here, and then we can go to the next topic and Q&A. This guy is not going to buy an EV till 2035 or 2040, right? It is guy that has got a Ram pickup, tows a boat 500 miles without stopping to pee, straight uphill in freezing weather, right? And he wants 600 miles of range, right? We spend way too much time as an industry worrying about this guy, right? What we need to worry about and focus on is getting your suburban soccer mom, apologies for being stereotypical, but who's driving a Ford Explorer, a Chevy Tahoe, or whatever it is, taking the kids to school, to soccer practice, to the dentist appointment, who are driving 40 miles a day and have a 3-car garage, right? And can plug in and it's no problem, right? And we haven't tapped out this market yet, right? So, my points here is just, let's stop worrying about the detractors and the people that will never buy an EV until they're like forced to, if you will, right? There's so many people that have the wherewithal, the means, and the use case where an EV is perfect for them, and they're still not getting one. This is who we need to focus on. So for those of us who own, lease, drive EVs, EVs are great. I'm on my 4th EV, and they're the best cars I've ever owned. They're perfect. They're great. They're wonderful. But the industry is, basically, a lot of the automakers basically marketed and convinced people that EVs were like the Apple iPhone, right? The greatest thing ever. And for many of us, they are. But for a lot of people, they're like a Palm Trio, right? They're good, but they're not quite there yet. They're not quite that iPhone. They're not quite the greatest thing ever, right? They don't have 400, 500 miles of range and can't charge in 5 minutes, et cetera, right? And so, we really, my point really here is a lot of the EVs to date have been really, really good, but a lot of them have been mediocre and just not sort of compelling and competitive enough. But the good news is, most of the EVs coming out in the next few years are really, really, really good. And, it's going to be hard for somebody to make a compelling argument that the EVs don't stand up and aren't competitive. But the reality is many of them haven't been in the past. And so just a final note, this was a quote from RJ Scaringe, the CEO of Rivian, on an Inside EVs podcast from a few, I guess a month or two ago, a couple months ago or whatever, where he said the amount of change we're going to see in the next 10 years will be far greater than what we saw in the last 10 years. And I think that's true, right? We're going to see massive improvements in battery technology, in price, and affordability, charging speed, charging customer experience, the experience at charging stations, et cetera, et cetera. And so while we're in a bit of a pause, I'm not a fan of the reset word, but we're a bit at a pause at the moment. It's very positive going forward. So with that, I will stop sharing.
I have a question.
Yes.
I think there was a few questions in the chat here too. Maybe I should get to those first. Solid state battery, thoughts about Chinese vehicles? Oh, yeah. Can you talk a little bit about Chinese vehicles? Are we going to see any in the US?
Well, there already are, right? If you consider, the Polestar and Volvo, right? Although they're, some are imported, some are going to be made and are made in South Carolina. But in essence, we have Chinese, half-owned EVs, and the newer Polestar models are actually based on some of their Chinese parent company brands, right? So underneath them, they really are sort of Chinese vehicles. The new Volvo XC60 that's coming out is really based on sort of the Chinese brand platform, which is escaping me at the moment. Somebody help me out. And
not BYD.
No, it's not BYD. No. That's different. It's the
Geely.
This the Geely brand, but it's the Geely parent. But I'm blanking on the actual brand underneath it. But at any rate, yeah, I think it's the Zeekr. Yeah. But at any rate, so we're being surrounded by Chinese EVs, right? They're very prevalent in Mexico. They're now coming to Canada. They're starting to really dominate in in Europe. So it is now just a matter of when. It's hard to predict what the Trump administration will do, right? But I think it's possible. Trump has already said, bring them on, bring the Chinese on. I'd love them, bring them in, as long as they do build factories and hire American workers, right? And so one thing that could happen is that we do what the Chinese did, which is to say, sure, you can build and sell EVs in China. So the Chinese, if you want to sell EVs in the US, you've got to produce them here in the US and do joint ventures, right? And that's what China did. And then now they sort of are killing all those joint ventures, right? So that's one model we could see. And the other thing I think is just we're going to see what happens in Canada, and if some of the Chinese, like BYD and some of the others, build factories or homologate them. I always have tough time saying that word. In Canada, we might see them shipped over the border, just like a lot of the cars we buy in the US from Stellantis and GM and Ford are made in Canada and Mexico, right? So we could see some of these sort of come over from other places. So it's, nobody knows when, but it's just a matter of time. BYD is already here. They have a massive bus and port tractor factory in Lancaster, California that employs like 1,000 people. Right. And so, they're already here. They're just not in the light passenger vehicle side. So that's a long non-answer. It's just, it's just hard to predict. But it could be in, like 3 years, most likely by the end of the decade. I feel pretty confident in that. But again, we already have like Polestar here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I also heard opinion that China could market their vehicles as used after a few miles.
Right.
And the tariff on used Chinese vehicles is, I think, 25%, which is a much smaller barrier.
Yeah, and so yeah, I've heard a lot of talk about that as well, right? And yeah, and you could see some things where they're sold, unquote, quote unquote, in Mexico, right? And then is used, and then they have like 20 miles on them,
Yes.
right? And then and then shipped over the border and stuff. So we who knows what we might see.
But we have seen some of the Chinese vehicles in Mexico. They have weird charging ports. I think they have the
Right.
Chinese standard, and that's
Yeah.
not good.
Yeah, that's not good. So that's got to change. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it is 8:01. Do you want to flip through the remainder of our slides real quick and then come back to questions, or what do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I think let's do it. Let me share the screen real quick. Go to the next slide. And yes, and I'm not really thinking enough. So I just want to highlight that we are very appreciative of. Oh, by the way, thank you, Loren, for your presentation. Thank you for your time. It was wonderful. We'll come back, but I just want to make sure that we have to make that clear that we thank you so much. Now I want to put a segue to thank those volunteers who bring electric vehicles to our events. We typically do not have events in winter, but now we have first electric vehicle first responder awareness workshops. And we had a very successful show in January in Emerson in Bergen County. Thank you so much for those of you who came. In February, it was in Somerville. And what really helped was the power of collaboration, because now we got partnership with RideWise. Sean is actually on the call, and they helped us to reach out to many first responders in the county. And so we got a record number of 107 attendees. That was just awesome. And the firehouse was actually new. It was just 1 year old. They have 6 bays. They emptied 4 of them for us, and we still didn't fill it. Another partnership was New Jersey Clean Cities Coalition. They brought electric step van from Henderson Fleet Solutions. So we are now actually broadening our program, and we are bringing more first responders to more communities, and we are bringing a wider variety of vehicles, including medium heavy duty. I'm not sure whether we will bring class 8, a tractor or a garbage truck, but that would be really awesome, because first responders, they need to touch them, and if anything, they need to hear from us that we are real people who have years of experience, and these vehicles don't burn all the time. Okay, and so that's where this is actually a demographic where they are more likely to reject electric vehicles. So being with them, mingling with them, and interacting, it's inherently positive. We don't have to switch their opinion on day one, but just make them think. It all takes time. So having said that, we have additional events coming up. In March, we have event in South Essex Fire Department, which happens to be in South Orange Village. Hit that link to register. We need lots of vehicles. In April, we have actually 2 events. Both of them are labeled as DEAM, Drive Electric Earth Months. The one on April 14th is in Blenheim Fire Company. It will be led by Patrick McDavid. This is South Jersey event. Wednesday, April 22nd, it's what we may classify as North Jersey, even though I would rather say it's in Central Jersey. But anyway, in Montgomery Township Fire Company. Again, hit those links if you are interested. We assume that people who come to South events, they do not come to North events. That's why we have two of those in 1 month. Otherwise, we would have only one. We actually already booked May. May will have, for information, will be May 18th, which I think would be Monday. And that would be in, what is the town? Oh, Passaic County. So it is some sort of lakes. I forgot. But anyway, Passaic County. And on May 28th, it will be also in South Jersey. It will be Shamong. It's in Burlington County. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Our next meeting, virtual, will be on Wednesday, April 15th. We would normally have it on Tuesday, but on Tuesday, April 14th, we will have first responder event. So on April 15th, our invited speaker will be Seth Lightman, the green living guy. He's actually the leader of Great Hudson River EVA. We will label this virtual event as DEEM because it's happening in April. And here is the registration link. You can hit it now and just book your spot. So that is it.
Dan, to us, those links are just pictures. So unless that goes out in an email, we can't hit that link.
So in chat is a link to this presentation slide. When you hit that link, it opens it and you can access all of those links. That's why we share always the QR code at the beginning, which shows which gives you access. Now, of course, if you came later, you may not see the history in the chat. So we'll show the link again. Our partners include Sustainable Jersey, transportation management associations such as RideWise, Easy Ride, Go Hunterdon, Cross County Connection, Greater Mercer TMA. We also, we have partnership with the New Jersey Clean Cities Coalition, with Department of Environmental Protection. Sierra Club is one of the major partners for the Drive Electric events. Charge EVC, Delaware Valley Tesla Owners Club, Lucid, Rivian. The NJ car has been here historically, but this is the New Jersey Coalition of Automotive Retailers. Okay, I'll just leave it like that. If we have test drive and they deliver electric vehicles, that's awesome. It's just getting a little bit more difficult. I don't see all of the icons, but Tri-County Sustainability is one of the hidden icons. It's there. South Jersey. Yeah. Okay. And I think these are the sponsorship options. Let's get back to conversation with Loren.
Okay. Loren, I had a question, and you mentioned about this too. Like, do you think it's likely that we're going to see additional, I don't know, regulatory risk or political interference? I noticed recently they required, I can't remember, it was for charging. The chargers had to be 100% of the domestic or something. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, it's for the NEVI funded chargers, the requirement was what we call in the industry BABA, Buy America, Build America, that 55% of the cost of the chargers was manufactured and assembled with parts, with components in the US. The Federal Highway Administration is now proposing that's 100%. And basically, I've talked to multiple EV charging hardware companies in the industry. None of them can meet that 100%. A few have told me they could get there. It would probably take 3 to 6 months. They'd have to change their supply chain, potentially invest millions of dollars. and and assemble things here that were assembled elsewhere. And what one person told me, which I thought was the most telling, he said, when you add that all up, the Navy market is so small, nobody would do it. So, right, like, so most people think it's just an end run around trying to kill the Navy program.
Yeah.
Under the flag of we're going to buy them and build them here, when the initial intent of the program under Biden and the the IAJA and all that stuff was actually working, right? We had like 5 companies, foreign companies, build factories in America to build chargers for Navy, right? Yeah, it's but there's comments I actually read the other day. It's still in the comment period. There were 22 comments. I read all 22, and all 22 were against it. Right. So we'll see what Sean. Why am I'm having an old person moment. Sean, the head of FHWA DOT. We'll see if they listen to the feedback or not. But yeah. I mean, with the Trump administration, right, we're always at some risk. But I think on the positive side, right, we're seeing a lot of states, a lot of utilities step up and add programs or up their program, right? I mean, Colorado was amazing last year. California is proposing 200 million, which isn't going to move the needle a lot, right? But it's still, I think, we lose some of the federal level, we'll pick some up and with utilities and states and stuff. And automakers, right? Like a lot of the automakers are getting very aggressive with their incentives as well on EVs.
So something that you were talking about earlier is that it's very supply driven. It's more about supply than demand right now. That seemed to be part of.
I mean, that's not everybody agrees with me on this, but I tried to make my case in some of my slides, right? It's like, if you go down to a Mazda dealer, there's no EVs, Infinity, right? So
right.
And I know like my brother-in-law is like a Mazda guy, right?
Yeah.
And and there are a lot of people that have been Honda and Toyota, etc., right? And Honda had and only has one EV now, right? And Toyota only had one, right? We're I think my part.
Full EV had only one. Yeah, they had 2 plug-in hybrids, which, by the way, were quite popular, but only one full EV. Yes, that's right.
Yeah. But in my point of sharing this sort of the Cadillac sort of case study, if you will, is I think it helps make the point, right? It's like, sure, it's Cadillac, right? And the volume is not huge, but when more than a quarter of their sales are from BEVs, right? It says there is demand, right? And when there were zero, obviously there were zero, right? You can't sell them if you don't. People can't buy them if they don't make them, right? And so Cadillac goes from 0 BEVs to 4, and then 27% of their sales comes from BEVs because and so that's just my point about supply. Like Stellantis, sorry to pick on Stellantis, but like Stellantis in their press release said, oh, we're pivoting because of changing consumer demand. Well, I'm, F you, right? Like name the compelling EVs from Stellantis. Right?
Charger.
A mediocre Jeep, right? A Fiat 500e, right? Which is a fun little car. I actually wouldn't mind having one for driving around town.
Well, it's Fiat. It's not really. I mean, it's Stellantis, I know, but it's not native like a natural American brand. It's imported from Europe. So.
Yeah, but just my point, like, so the Jeep and what else am I missing? And
you're missing the Dodge Charger, which is made in Canada.
Right.
Which nobody buys.
Right, and it got very mixed reviews as well, right? That it wasn't a very good car, right? You know, but hey, it had an exhaust sound. It had a motor sound, right?
I've been waiting for somebody to do that for years. That was like one of the early ideas.
But I mean, I hope that answers the question, right? And that's why I think, you know, this next 18 months are going to be key, right?
Okay.
Because we didn't actually have many compelling new EVs come to the US last year, right? And now in the next 18 months, right, you're going to have, you know, and some of them are going to be luxury, like the BMW iX3 is getting amazing reviews, right? And you know, and a lot of these cars that are coming out are going to be, you know, really good. Faster charging, good range, software that actually works, right?
Okay.
You know,
Bruce wanted to. His hand is up.
Oh, well, I just wanted to say thank you for letting me come to your meeting. My name is Bruce Stout. I'm with the Vancouver Electric Vehicle Association in Vancouver, Canada. Wow. And we're getting all excited to see what happens with the Chinese electric cars that are supposed to come sometime soon.
Yeah.
And we've been around since 1988 as an electric vehicle association. We have a 1913 Detroit Electric that was built as an electric car and still runs.
Nice.
And we do some of the same things you people do. And I'm really glad I attended today because there's a really good idea to talk to fire departments. Thank you for that.
Very good.
Thanks, Bruce. Stan, do you want to wrap up the recording and we can continue talking?
Okay. Well, well, thank you very much. If you were watching the recording, if you were live, you would enjoy that we will actually continue the conversation. Thank you for watching.